You hear it all across the headlines. There is a housing affordability crisis going on right now. If you just look at the headlines, you're not going to get the full story. So I'm here to break down what that actually means for you if you're a first-time home buyer and ways to potentially get that first home for yourself. So stick around, listen. I have my lender partner coming to break everything down for you and to give you advice on how to purchase your first home. So if you're new here, my name's Nathan Klein. I'm a local realtor in Columbus, Ohio. And as we get started in this whole affordability narrative, let's first break that down and what that means. So, affordability in the housing market, all is determined on, how much homes are worth along with rates. So the interest rate in the market is pushing home prices up and can create that affordability issue. So again, this is something that, we have seen trending up over the past 10 years or so. I mean, if you look at what home prices were in Columbus back in 2015, the average sales price of a home was right around like $150,000. Today, we just got the most recent stats from the Columbus Board of Realtors. You are looking at an average price of about $320,000. So when you break that down, I mean, if you would have bought a house back then, obviously all of us would have loved to buy a house back then. But if you would have bought a house back then when they were saying that it's not a good time to buy, you shouldn't buy, then look how much equity you are losing out on throughout that time frame. And there's a lot of conversations around and myths, honestly, around buying a home and how can you afford to buy a home. And the number one myth anytime I'm talking to a home buyer is that they need 20% down to buy a home. That's completely not true. And I am about to have my lender partner come in, talk about what it takes to buy a home and what programs are out there that can benefit you to get into a home with less money out of your pocket and allow you to start to build that equity over time. So the real issue here is really you can't afford to not buy a home in this current market as these home prices continue to increase, because there is the potential for you to get priced out of the market if you wait. Okay, so we are back with Lauren Walton. She's with the Gerber Group. She is one of my preferred lenders that I work with all the time. And we already talked a little bit, one of the myths that's out there that buyers need 20% down to buy a home. We'll go into that here in a second. But some other ones that I feel like we hear a lot is like buyers, they feel like they have too many student loans. They can't afford a home with that. Or maybe their credit's not perfect, or they want to wait to buy a house. So like these are some things that I know you and I hear constantly. Yeah. And so can you go into what grants and programs are out there for first-time home buyers?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I get this question a lot because most of my first-time home buyers, income and credit typically are not the issue, but the issue is that they just don't have enough money saved, right? Everything is expensive right now. So there are some great federal programs out there through Ohio Finance Agency. These are going to be down payment assistance programs and grants. So you can actually get your full down payment covered on conventional or FHA on those programs. So you would have zero money down as your down payment. So for conventional, you'd be able to get 3% down payment assistance, and for FHA, it's 3.5% assistance. So that would mean that you would get that money that would be forgiven after 5 or 7 years, depending on the program that you would choose, which is wonderful. So during that period of time, you do not actually make a payment on that second. It just is a silent second mortgage that sits on your property. You can move out after 1 year and hold that property as a rental. It would just be that if you sold before the 5 or 7 years, you would have to pay that back. But these programs are wonderful. So many of my first-time home buyers take advantage of these, and they end up being able to buy so much sooner than they thought with being able to get their down payment fully covered. And then that would mean that the only money that they would potentially have would be for fees and closing costs. But then I also have many buyers that get those negotiated and the seller to be able to cover those for them as part of their negotiating process.
Yeah, so when we work together, because we are a team and we work with you as a buyer to make sure that we're setting you up for the best success. When we negotiate, potentially a house that's been on the market for it makes it through the first weekend or, a couple weeks, and we can have that ability to negotiate and maybe get some seller credits. Can you talk a little bit about ways that we can use those seller credits to best set the buyer up for the best success in the future?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the seller credits can be used in a lot of different ways. A lot of clients will use them to offset their fees and closing costs if having the most minimal amount of cash to close is what is most important to them. But then for other buyers, if they don't mind having some cash due at the table, they may use those credits to buy down their interest rate. We have really great temporary interest rate buy downs where your payment can be reduced by a substantial amount in the first couple years of your loan. Hopefully you'll be able to refinance shortly thereafter. But there's a lot of different ways that you can utilize the credit. So I always recommend letting, myself and Nathan know like what it matters most to you. Is it your bottom line as cash due at the table, or do you care most about what your interest rate and monthly payment are? And we can show you a bunch of different examples on how those credits can serve you best.
Yeah, and that's important to talk about that rate buy down, because I know a lot of people are just in this place where they're like, well, we're going to wait for those rates to come down. And that allows you, maybe 1, 2, sometimes a 3-year buy down on that rate that can save you hundreds each month.
Yes.
Instead of saying, hey, we're just going to negotiate $10,000 off the purchase price, we can take that $10,000, you buy it at that purchase price, and then we use that money to buy that rate down over the life of that. And then once the rate does come down, if it comes down, fingers crossed,
yes.
they come down. We don't have a crystal ball, we can't predict that. Yeah. But once those rates come down, as you mentioned, you can refi, and any of that money that was left over from that rate buy down, you can apply to
your
the
principal.
new.
Yes, it would be credited back, so you don't lose any of that money. That's why I love that program so much. And he's right. A lot of the clients do tell us, I'm going to wait for rates to come down, but we also know we have seen that, that story play out. And when rates come down, it doesn't necessarily always mean that that's the best time for buyers, because as rates go down, buyer competition goes up. And so that typically means that you have to offer more on the property. You may not be able to negotiate any credits, or, you may have to give things up as a buyer, such as inspection or remedy. And so it really isn't necessarily the best time for buyers, and it can sometimes make for an uncomfortable situation. So I have so many clients that really, they got the best deal when they bought at the peak of rates, which was like 8% plus.
Yes.
And although that wasn't ideal in terms of the rate, they'll they'll refinance once rates come down, but they at least had little to no competition. So
correct. And I've seen it more so over the past year, where I've been able to negotiate these seller credits on behalf of my buyers. And I've had some buyers who had to bring nothing, or they've had to bring like maybe half of what they thought they were going to have to bring. So there are some really great opportunities out there. And, waiting for rates to come down, yes, sounds great. But that buyer competition, once those do drop, we've been through it, and we can see what that means for our buyers.
Yes.
So it is really important to make sure that, you as a viewer understand that we are working in your best interest. We want to make sure that you are set up the best for your future. And there are really great opportunities right now if you allow yourself to not be held back. And, we didn't touch on it quite yet, but we can hit it a little bit more here. But we have buyers that come to us and say, my credit's not good enough.
Yep.
And, maybe just touch quickly on what we do as far as maybe credit repair help, or even we get people who say their credit's not good enough, but there are programs out there for every credit range.
Yes, so I get that a lot. People think that their credit may not be good enough, and a lot of times it's because of things that they've heard. They typically think that their credit has to be higher than it actually does. But even if you happen to be at a score that is under the minimum, we do have some really great credit repair programs that are free of cost to the buyer. We actually pay for the membership, and then we can utilize that on your behalf to get your credit up. So these are like credit enhancement, credit improvement tools. The biggest advice I have on that is, if you're unsure of where your credit may be, or you think that it may be under what the minimum is to qualify, is just make sure you get pre-approved early enough that you have the runway to get that repaired. It does take a little bit of time, but there are some really great tools out there. And my other advice would be not to make any changes to your credit until you consult with a lender. Oftentimes, you may not need to pay something off in full to get your credit up. It could just be changing a few things around. There are some really great tools that we can help you with. So my advice would be to reach out and make sure you do it well in advance of being ready to actually house hunt.
Yeah, and trust me, this is a judgment-free zone.
Yes.
We do not care. We are here to help you and make sure that you feel the most comfortable. So we are in your corner, we're advocating for you, and we are looking out for your best interests. So Thank you for taking a second to
Yeah.
kind of break that down and join us today, Lauren.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So now that you've had a chance to listen a little bit more with myself and my lender partner, Lauren Walton, about different programs that are out there to help first-time home buyers, you can see that maybe the narrative that you're telling yourself that I can't buy a house or I can't afford a house right now might not be true. So if you want to explore some more options as far as what it looks like to buy, what you might be able to qualify for, make sure that you click that link below. Let's set up a one-on-one consult so we can kind of go over everything, look at your picture and as far as like what you want to do in your real estate goals. And then we can really create a game plan that is catered for you and can help you win in this market. So as always, I am Nathan Klein, or CBus Nathan, however you want to refer to me as. I put out videos every Friday. I would love for you to follow along. Again, if you want to hear all things about Columbus, their neighborhoods, things to do, market stats, nonprofits, all of those things. Every Friday, I have a new video. So make sure you like, subscribe, follow along, and I hope to hear from you soon.